I'd like to talk to you a little bit about myself and why I am so passionately interested in the well-being of these patients with brain cancer, and my background and how that came about. I actually was doing something much different prior to becoming a doctor, completely different, in fact. I was working as a pianist. I was a piano performance major and intensely interested in classical music and in opera, and was playing for opera companies. And I became friends with a family, an extraordinary family actually, a neurosurgeon, 6 children, all of them very talented, musical. And this neurosurgeon had a real love for opera. And in getting to know him and his family, I got to know his patients. And one day, on a Sunday, he asked if I wanted to go to the hospital, and I thought that would be kind of neat. And there was no rehearsal that day, and so I went. And I got to see patients with brain cancer, and they were withering away. And I asked him, can't anything be done for these patients? And he said that despite all of his skill and all of our modern technologies, that very little could be done, and that they all would die in a year or two. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. Can you imagine, in this era of what I call the miracle of modern medicine, that there is a disease still that doesn't have any successful treatment? When we go to the doctor, no matter what we find out, we expect there's some treatment available. And in fact, we expect that there's some expert in our community that's available to us that can bring to us the latest treatment. So I was amazed to find out that there was nothing, and I asked him why. And he said, well, it's challenging for a variety of reasons, but it's mostly because there's so few of these patients that no one cares. Well, I felt horrible for these patients that I had just met. I felt horrible at this situation, and I asked him, what can be done? And he said, well, what can be done is young, talented people can take an interest in this, can devote their life to it, and can make a difference. He said that's the way everything is done in medicine in the end, if you look at it. It's because an individual made it their life mission to make a difference. So I left that dinner. I can still remember it distinctly. It was Sunday night. We had just seen the hospital Sunday day, and I left. And I just was thinking what I was doing just didn't seem to be that important anymore. So I saw him and I said, I'm interested in helping out. What do I need to do? And he said, you need to go to medical school. So that was the hard part that came after the decision. But that's what I did. I went to medical school, and I went to medical school wanting to be a doctor to take care of brain cancer patients. And every bit of my preparation was devoted to that, was trying to understand why this disease had been so underserved, why it had been such a challenge, why these challenges had not been met at what needed to be done. Part of that preparation included neurosurgical training, because at the end of the day, it is the neurosurgeon that begins treatment for most of these patients. I think that's a very important point. And perhaps it's one of the reasons why we haven't been as good as we should have been with the disease, is that neurosurgeons are very busy. If you take a look at my practice, which is primarily brain cancer, it's a very busy practice. And so to have the energy and time to devote to all of the downstream care for patients is a challenge. Along with that, I decided that because treatments were so poor and that breakthroughs were needed, that I had to train to be a researcher. And for that reason, I chose to go to a medical school with a very extensive research program. That was Washington University in St. Louis, and leverage that experience to come out here to the Pacific Northwest, where I was fortunate enough to work in the laboratory of Dr. Leroy Hood, who is the director of the Institute for Systems Biology. And Leroy Hood is one of the world's authorities on genomic science, and now what's called systems medicine. And this is exactly the type of science that we need to understand brain cancer and to bring better treatments.